We have Alexis Reed from the Chamber, Brian Levine from the Chamber, Gigi Godwin from the Chamber, Lo Yoda with M&T Bank, Anise Couty, Holy Cross Health, and Andre John Duke, PNC Bank, Andy Bridge, Eagle Bank, A. Prentice and Associate, and Miss Angela Prentice, Ashley Bagwell with Harrison Malone, Bill Wichman with Kaiser Permanente, Bruce Lansdowne with Trinity Health, Cecilia Vergara with the Chamber, Dave Hargadon with the Chamber, Ellen Korn with Chesapeake Public Strategies, PZ Halim with Montgomery College, Gil with the Chamber, Greg Coleman with Swartgate, Dr. Jermaine Williams with Montgomery College, Joan McLaughlin with Sodexo, Jerry Shapiro with Sherrata and Duncan, LeBron Kimball. We also have Leslie Weber with Suburban Hospital, Mauricio Vera, MCC, Megan Foy, MCC, Melissa Childress, MCC. We have Ms. Noha Gala from Truist, Patty Sadusky with MCC, Robert Bohanna with MCC, Simran Takar with MCC, Taran Deep Bauer with Integrity, Tony Franco with Galero Mazet, and we have Goss Bowman, I believe, with Beverage at Diamond.
And
we have a couple of the guests who their names are not on the screen, but if you can pop in and say hello and say your name, that'd be greatly appreciated.
I'm concerned that we didn't get everybody on the board. Are there any board members that were not announced by Juliet? I would love it if you switched on your screen and announced yourself. If she missed anybody. All right. Okay, then off we go.
Okay, so Gigi, is it okay to begin?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, very good. So I started just sharing my gratefulness for being able to come and spend some time with you this evening. And tonight I really wanted to be very intentional about our time. An hour flies by very quickly. So I am going to share as much information as I can with you that I think is going to be really important for you to hear in your role as the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and in ways in which I think it's important for us to begin to think about partnership and opportunities in support of the school system. I know that everyone that's here on this board, whether you had children in the school system, still have children in the school system, or are just a community member who had, you may not have any affiliations with children in the school system, but care about it because it's so much a part of who we are in Montgomery County. In MCPS, which I've had the pleasure of serving in for this coming August, it will be 21 years, is a school system that has been known for its excellence and all that we do to provide services to our students in a very diverse community. And the last 2 years, no doubt, have been challenging for MCPS as it has been for every other school system in the nation or every other place in the world. But I do see that through those challenges have come great opportunities for us to think about how we rebuild, network, and partner to take care of the very thing that we're all here to talk about this evening, which is education. So again, thank you for allowing me some time to share some of our work around goals that we want to accomplish, the vision, and really our passion for the important work that we provide, which is providing an excellent education to more than 160,000 students in Montgomery County Public Schools. So I want to tell you, I've been very engaged with our community over, actually for a very long time, but more intentionally over the past few weeks to really talk about critical work that needs to be done now in MCPS. And there are 3 priorities that are the focus of the work for Montgomery County Public Schools. And I want to just share with you what those 3 priorities are and why they are important, because it has been a big part of the conversations that I've been having with families, staff members, business partners, whoever will listen, because I do think it's important for everyone to think about what is my role in helping the children within our community, and then how do I help the school system and understand what the priority areas are so that I can be in partnership with them. And so I want to share those 3 with you tonight, and I'll start right now, and I'll begin with the first. The first of those priorities is that after COVID-19, as you all know, as we all have experienced, it was very difficult. This pandemic came up, we had to basically shift how we did our work overnight, and most importantly, how we educate children. The pandemic lasted much longer, or, now an endemic has gone on much longer than any of us could have anticipated. During that time, there were needs, an opportunity for us to figure things out, continue to raise its head, depending on the type of variant that we were managing for COVID-19. For all those reasons, and because all of the difficulties that you all are well aware that families faced during that time, it became very difficult to establish relationships. It became even more difficult to communicate when everyone was really trying to protect the interest of staying safe and trying to figure out what worked best for their families. And with all of that said, after 2 years of just managing that, the first priority really gets to the fact that we are going to have to engage our stakeholders and rebuild trust. I would venture to say this is probably a focus for every organization, because in some ways, everyone was impacted, good, bad, or indifferent as a result of the pandemic. But that's our first priority, re-engaging our stakeholders and rebuilding trust, which is why I said I'm grateful to be here tonight talking with you, because one of the ways that we begin to build that bridge is to be able to meet, talk, and develop an understanding of where we are, and how do we build partnership. And most importantly, how do we communicate moving forward to build that bridge and continue to build on it? So that's the first priority. The second priority is that we are organizing our schools and workplaces within MCPS for health and social emotional wellness. And that does include safety and security concerns of students and staff, and really building well-being environments throughout the entire school system. Again, for reasons you probably already know and understand, but as a result of the pandemic, we have seen what that that isolation of our students in ways that they've been isolated over a long period of time, and how that's impacted them when they've come back to school this year and are reconnecting and struggling to reconnect in some ways. We often hear from students at all levels in terms of how it was difficult to re-engage in relationships that they'd had prior to the pandemic and not really being sure about how to do that. I'll give the example of when we came back to school this year, in education, you normally have a really good profile of what a ninth grader needs, just like you have a good profile of what a sixth grader needs, and the kindergartner, when they enter into a new grade area level for the first time. Well, this year, essentially in every high school, you basically had 2 freshman classes, the freshmen and the sophomores. The 9th and 10th graders were having the same experiences of re-entering into school for the first time over a period of time. And again, something that we have not experienced before. So when we think about wellness, safety, and security, while we know there are many vulnerabilities right now in terms of emotional support that's needed at so many different levels for students, but also for families, because our students are a microcosm of what's happening in their homes and their communities. And when we think about the whole wellness need that we see exasperating across the nation in so many different ways, no, the schools aren't going to be isolated from that need, but we do have to constantly build on what should we put in place to make sure that we're addressing a need that may have always been there. We know it was always there, but it's presented even a more significant support structure for it. So organizing the workplace and the school buildings around social emotional wellness is the second priority. And then the third is refocusing on equitable teaching and learning, which has always been a main goal of our school system. That's why we came into education. We are here for our students, and we have the responsibility to really transform education, ensure that we're meeting the needs of every student within the school system, all 160,000 of them, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic impact, status, zip code, whatever it may be. And now we have to be even more focused on, as a result of the pandemic, how have all of these groups been impacted with their learning? And so we have gotten some data that have shown us it definitely our early learners really were impacted throughout the pandemic, because in those early grades where they build a lot of the basic skills, it was difficult for them to do that in a virtual learning environment. And so now here we are making up for that. So refocusing on that equitable teaching and learning is what is going to get us to a goal of providing equity, because that means we're personalizing the learning experience for every student, and it needs to be a meaningful one. So with that said, those are the three priorities. I have really delved in on number one by having the meaningful engagement sessions within our community in a variety of different ways. And it's starting with having a candid conversation about where we are and what we need to do to reach our full potential. A part of my commitment is building trust. And so I have been listening with our families and our communities and going out to the community and hosting those listening sessions. And I just completed the third listening session in the first series of listening sessions. The first one was at Gaithersburg High School. The second was at Walter Johnson, and the third was at Paint Branch High School. And we're planning even more conversations, exploring options for this engagement. You know, having people involved by participating in person, virtually, having these meetings in other languages other than English, doing them with key stakeholders and partners. And even if you contact me from the Chamber of Commerce and say, you know, Dr. McKnight, we'd like to be able to have a session with an expanded group of our partners, I'm going to show up, because I really want everyone to understand why these priorities are important and how they are going to impact our community. And we all want to be committed to being successful in these areas. So I say that because you are key partners in this work. And I do look forward to the conversation that we're having tonight. And most importantly, how we're going to continue. Because we always have to have a conversation around what are the hopes, desires, and dreams for our school system. And we have to discuss how we're going to work in partnership to get there. And so, you know, to improve, not only to improve engagement, but focusing on that excellent and equitable experience in the classroom has to be the foundation of the work that we do. And every classroom that a student goes into and the experience that they come out with really does play into how does that then prepare us for a better community in Montgomery County. With that said, I also wanted to share with you tonight, in addition to those three key priorities, some key investments that we made this year in our operating budget. And a big part of our budget conversation was, yes, we've gotten money from the federal government for ESSER relief, which was all about COVID relief. And so we've also been able to use some of that funding to help us dream and say, how are we going to be innovative in education in a way that meets the needs of who we are and what the needs are today. But our operating budget always presents the foundation of the things that we have to have in our school system in order to still provide a very quality education to every student that comes into our schools. And I'll just name a few of those key investments, but I think it's important for you to know what they are and why they are important in our school system. So earlier I mentioned, as we looked at data from last year, and I'm talking about learning data from our students, we definitely saw that there was a drop in learning data for our elementary students in a very significant way, particularly around literacy and math, and looking at those first and second graders who were in fact kindergartners and first graders when we were impacted by COVID-19 in the spring of 2020, and then continued into the 21 school year. So we are providing a full-time reading specialist in each of our elementary schools. So that means we are prioritizing the investment in literacy. And so that reading specialist is going to be one who is able to provide small group instruction for students to be able to constantly do assessments to see whether students are progressing in their learning in reading particularly, and working with the classroom teacher to do that. So every elementary school is going to have that support. We've also directed resources to ensure that all of our schools have a full-time staff development teacher. Growing up in Montgomery County professionally, I had the opportunity to experience the power in making sure that it is a commitment to every single staff member in a school to really reflect on what am I doing in my role that makes me able to be equipped to provide the learning for every student in my classroom, learning that supports them, but yet challenges them for them to become and do whatever it is that they desire to do. And our staff development teacher is a big step in the right direction. We're establishing a welcome center that's going to help ensure our students and their families are welcome into Montgomery County and into MCPS. And most importantly, that they receive the services and supports that they need when they begin their journey in MCPS. And I highlight how important that is because at one point in time in MCPS, we could look at spikes of what was happening around the world or times of year in which we would see a lot of enrollment happening for international students. Well, I am here to tell you that those spikes are no longer as predictable. And this is something that we see as an ongoing enrollment in our school system. And we want those families to come in and it not be a cumbersome process for them to receive what they need to make sure they are becoming stabilized and well structured and supported in our school system so that the children can get stability in their lives as soon as possible and begin to receive their education in a meaningful way. So that's one area. We've also expanded our pre-kindergarten access to 3 and 4-year-old children, including full day classes. That was a priority for us because we know that the earlier we're able to expose children to an education, the better prepared they come into our kindergarten classes. And so as we expand pre-K programs and we look at where that expansion is needed and where we have a presence and where we don't in Montgomery County, that's a big focus and investment for us moving forward. We also, one other investment that comes to mind is we added 12 security rovers and other staff to enhance safety and security in our schools and to promote the well-being of our students. In addition to school psychologists, we also have hired 33 social workers. Now, I know I say 33 with emphasis on it, but I have to tell you, it was not easy. At a time in education in which everyone's saying we need to support the well-being of students, just like bus drivers across the nation, some of these jobs have really become to the forefront and saying this has to be a part of the educational structure to make sure that the students are well so that we can make sure that learning is accessible to them. And we started out this year very slow in trying to hire our social workers, but we have been successful in really working with partners at higher education institutes to be able to get interns who are in college and bring them into the fold to help have them do some internship opportunity with us so that they become folded into the culture of what we want to do. And so we're excited to share that. But those are just a few, but I mentioned those key budget investments because I want you to see how those budget investments are connected to the priorities. And the connection is what we always have to continue to say has to happen because we have to be very thoughtful about how we're going to reach goals in these priority areas. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but those 3 priority areas are definitely connected to our strategic plan within the system. You can go to our school system website and you'll see that the Board of Education and myself have had many conversations over the year about building out that strategic plan and it being inclusive of the voices of our community members and our staff members and our students. And we want it all to be connected. One other update I wanted to share was on the capital side, some of the important projects that we're working on with our county partners to fund. We have a new Joanne Ledlick Elementary School at Broad Acres. We have a major construction upgrade at Burnt Mills Elementary School, as well as Stonegate Elementary School. We have an addition happening at Greencastle Elementary School. And as I named some of these schools, I may have talked to some of you at some point in time or other stakeholders around why some of these projects are really very important at this point for us to address facilities in a way that have needed our attention, and we can't do it all at one time, but we're trying to be very thoughtful about those projects. We're doing an addition at William Tyler Page Elementary School, as well as Burtonsville Elementary School, and have been very engaged intentionally with these communities in hearing their perspectives around, what are some of the key issues that they're thinking about as we are trying to build out what the plan is going to be in capital in each of these areas. So I wanted to share that. And then we also have, we are beginning to plan some significant enhancements at Benjamin Banneker and White Oak Middle Schools as well. So just wanted to share those with you because they really are key investments in our student success. And while some may say these are facilities, it does matter. We've had studies show us that our students care very much about the environments, the facilities that they come to every day, and how that speaks to the value that the school system shows to them in facilities. So I wanted to point those things out to you. I think those were the main topics that I wanted to talk with you about. Oh, there's one more. I don't know who was involved or how many of you may have come out, but we are continuing to expand our partnership in so many different ways to support our educational ecosystem initiative. Earlier this year, we were able to approve an MOU between Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, USG, and Economic Development. And it truly is about how do we make sure that educational infrastructure works that feeds back into our economy in a meaningful way in Montgomery County overall. This past Saturday, we were able to come over to Montgomery College and unveil the Ignite Hub, which is going to be a hub that's based there at Montgomery College, but is really supportive of everything that we've dreamed of in this educational ecosystem. And that is to be able to have our students come in and create prototypes for apps that will solve problems within our community that they care about. And it's fascinating to see it because it reminds us all the time of how valuable and how smart our students are. And if we give them the opportunity to show us that they can actually lead, they show us every time that they can. And so it was thrilling to watch them share with the community members the prototypes of the different apps that was solving issues around social emotional wellness, getting students exposed to career paths early on, just issues that they may see in their community and how there may be a business opportunity that could come up to solve a problem. So we were able to share that and unveil that Ignite Hub on Saturday. And it just really spoke to the partnership that is so strong in Montgomery County that we were able to leverage through saying we want to collectively solve a lot of problems through the partnership through education, but also saying how does it ultimately contribute positively to the economy in Montgomery County. So we look forward to continuing to build so many different pathways that our students will be involved in within our community and our parents and you as partners, so that we can see the benefit of these investments into the education and the career pathway that we provide for our students in the school system. So I think I will stop there. That was a lot of information, but I will pause there and see if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you think is important to add to this discussion. And most importantly, I also like to hear your feedback on the priority areas that I mentioned. You may have a perspective that you believe is important for me to know and understand, or an idea that should be taken into consideration around those 3 priority areas. So I will stop there and turn it back over to you, Gigi, to guide the discussion.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I wondered, because we have Dr. Williams from Montgomery College, I wanted to be sure that he had an opportunity, as a partner. And of course, we don't have Ann Kademian with us from Universities at Shady Grove. And I was privileged to be included in her message to you, Dr. McKnight, saying that she was sorry they have an event there tonight, so she wasn't able to join us. But I know that our education partners are working together. I just wanted to give him an opportunity to comment.
Well, thank you very much, Gigi, and Dr. McKnight. Always a pleasure to see you and be in a space with you, and thankful to all the board members who are here and everyone who is attending. And then I'd just say absolutely very excited about the partnerships that have been formed in terms of the educational ecosystem, MCPS, MC, and USG. Dr. McKnight and Dr. Kademi and I have met on several occasions, and we are, as you heard, dedicated to fueling Montgomery County, right? We're dedicated to continuing to create solutions that solve, right? And explanations that explain it, and look at those hard questions as we move forward with a critical lens on knowing that diversity is key, and knowing that we have some gaps that we need to address, and building on our great successes, right? Building on the wonderful successes and identifying those unknowns and pursuing those with big goals that are maybe unimaginable, yet we need to take the time to imagine what can be and identify the plan. And that's what we're looking towards. And that's what you heard from Dr. McKnight when she spoke just a little bit about our energy, our synergy, our interconnectivity. We have 3 educational leaders here in terms of us, and I know definitely others, but I'm just speaking about MCPS, MC, and USG at this moment in time, who are dedicated to advancing the county in many different ways. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts, and I'm looking forward to the continual collaboration as we fuel the economy, speak to the needs of the region in terms of workforce, both in the moments of now and the moments of the future. So.
I guess, Gigi, what we probably could do is, if you have a question, just put your hand up, and maybe Juliet can spy out people who have questions. But I'll start with one. I'm curious if you canvass business folks or business leaders And even pre-pandemic, if you ask them some of their biggest challenge, and many times it's around human resources and finding people and qualified people and the like. I'm curious, in your world, do you face the same thing with finding teachers and other support staff? Are you faced with the same issues that we are with finding people like that? I'm just curious.
Mr. Yoder, you must have been listening in on a conversation, a meeting actually that I had right before coming in here. And the answer is absolutely yes. And you said the key word, issues that existed before the pandemic. And so if you look at education, we could come in with a wealth of research in terms of why education in so many different ways it's always been a career that we've had to champion. Now, what's fascinating about that is when you think about in the United States overall, in terms of how we look at education and how we view educators, very different from places where you see education being very revered as one of the most respected professions you can ever have, right? If you compare and look at studies from Singapore and in other places around the world. Now, what I'm grateful for here in this space right now and reflecting on that is we have the Maryland Blueprint that we are implementing. And I'm thrilled about it because I think it finally helps us take some innovative steps in the right direction of how we can reestablish the respect of the profession of education, because the bottom line is without an education, none of us would be here. I'm afraid to think about what the future would be like if we aren't preparing through pathways of education of all the professions that we're going to need, whether it is professions that are a result of investments in four-year degrees, or if they are career opportunities that may only require certification. Whatever it is, it's going to require some type of education. And yes, we've been experiencing that problem. And so what we have done is taken some proactive steps and very innovative steps in how we address it. We have a Maryland Teacher Academy because in the way that I see it, every problem that we need to solve in terms of workforce, particularly here in Montgomery County, our answers to all of those are sitting right in our school buildings, period. That's where they are. In whether they're, future employees of Montgomery County Public Schools or employees for you, they are sitting in the 100 and the 210 schools that we have right now. What we have to do is create the pathway for them to make those opportunities accessible for them and to prepare them, whether that may be preparing them financially so that they don't come out of college if they go to college with debt, so that when they go into college, they are ready. And so that means if they go into these career path, these careers, they don't determine what being on the job is like on the first day that they're showing up there, but they're getting the internships and the mentorship and the experience of these professions along the way, so that you and others as employers can say, listen, this is what we know you're going to need, and this is how we're going to help you make sure you have the gravitas, the experience, the fortitude to be successful in this role, all of those pieces. And so I bring it back to, and I hope not to be repetitive in this theme of partnership, but even when you think about that problem, Mr. Yoder, because we're all seeing it, we need to make sure we have a prepared workforce in our county and around the world. And all of it can't happen in isolation in the kindergarten to 12 space. And the way in which I see that being innovative and different is not only the pathways that I talk about us creating, but why aren't we exposing our students earlier to understanding what some of the career paths may be when we help them recognize what some of their natural strengths are and interests are? And I know sometimes even when I've spoken to business owners in the past, and it's like, oh, well, we really don't want to talk with students until they're later on, getting ready to go into their career, 12th grade in high school. Well, actually, we have students who are choosing pathways in middle school. And some of them are very, very grounded in that this is what I want to do. And this is how I see fitting into my area of interest. And so why can't we bring into the classroom the businesses that can speak to what those skills are and connect it to the learning so that it's actually very relevant for the students. So they're not just saying, I'm looking at this in an educational structure, but I'm also looking at this in a career way as I'm learning about it. Those are the spaces of innovation that I think are needed and necessary for us to address the issues around the workforce right now and for the future. Got me excited on that one. I'm passionate about it.
Oh, I see a hand up. I see Bill Wishman with Kaiser Permanente. Bill?
Thank you so much, and just wonderful information and insight. A couple things. Number one, how do you see early childhood care and education being used as a tool to prepare young children for school or more formal school? That's number one. Number two, as children progress through K through 12, what are we doing these days to help kids and young adults or adolescents develop executive functioning skills so that they can enter the workforce and manage multiple tasks and communicate effectively and prioritize tasks and so forth?
That's another good one, Bill. So I'll start with the early childhood preparation and why I think that's important. So the earlier you expose a child to education, whether literacy, communication, all the things that they may not get if that intentional environment of education does not exist, then it's by chance that we're preparing them for kindergarten. Okay, so one of the most interesting things you would ever see if you ever wanted to take a trip around schools to see some of what I'm talking about is you walk into a kindergarten class and you see a student who has been involved in pre-K and they can have a conversation with you. And they can identify, or they come in knowing how to spell their names, or they come in knowing those things. And you may have a child who was very much cared for and is coming into kindergarten without that foundation. There's a gap that's already there starting in kindergarten, okay? So pre-K is the conduit to us making sure that we're closing those gaps earlier and making sure that children are exposed to education early on. And, not to get off on a side note here, but I tell you, it is all about exposure. My son is 10 years old, but when I was at home on bed rest and had him, and I was one of those moms who I have to work. I can't sit for a long period of time. I had to figure out what I was doing. And so before he was born, I was reading. I was reading to him. The dogs started to know when story time would happen because the dogs would lay and listen as well. And I'll never forget this. It was about 4 months. I continued to read to him. He started to turn the pages. So it is about the exposure. And what we want to do is make sure we're making these resources available to every family. And that's an educational resource about why pre-K is important, as well as making sure that the facilities are accessible to them. And it's not difficult for them to access those facilities because it's just early exposure to education that makes all the difference. And we have a unique opportunity through the Maryland Blueprint as well that have allowed us to be able to expand pre-K and be able to bring private providers into the fold of that. And I see that as a great opportunity for us in Montgomery County because that means then the expansion piece doesn't become as difficult. So that's the early childhood programming piece that is important. And I will say an opportunity I believe that we have now is to be able to create these markers that says to us, when a child goes into kindergarten, in pre-K, what do we want them to know and be able to do? So by the time they get into kindergarten, then we do have that consistency there. In terms of the executive functioning skills, so if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, my answer would be, well, we need to bring people in who can teach them what that is and what's expected of them in the job workforce. I'm going to say I would switch a little bit of that today. I think that's still important. I think we also have to take into consideration, and going to Mr. Yoder's question earlier, who are the Gen Z and the Gen X generation, who they are, what are the things that are important to them too? Because in some way, we've got to be able to find the middle ground for the things that we know cannot be lost and how we run businesses that we know are effective and important. But we also have to hear from them, what are the things that need to exist in the workplace that's important to me, that's going to make me want to continue to be a member of this workspace. It may be, do the workspaces exist and elevate the ideals and values of its employees that makes them want to be a part of that, that environment? It could be that. It could be, what are the benefits that may be different now than it was before? You know, at one point in time, you went into a role very much thinking about, when I retire, this is what I want to happen. Well, we're not seeing that in our workforce or our young people going into the workforce right now. We're seeing them thinking about, what are the things that are making me feel fulfilled and happy right now? And what does that look like when it exists in my workspace? And what does it look like when it doesn't? So I think we have to have a meeting of the minds to really understand that from both perspectives, to say, what does it need to be today? And how do we value all of this? And then come out in a space in which we're not losing anything either, whether it may be service or a skill set that we're looking for. Absolutely.
If I may, I see our board member niece Couty with Holy Cross Health.
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us today. When I think about the role of the school district for economic development, I want to make sure we're not losing anyone, because we need every one of those kids to be able to contribute to our community and to our civic engagement over time. So my question is about disparities in outcomes, racial and ethnic disparities in outcomes. And what I know the district has struggled with that for quite a while. What's your thinking on that? Where do you think the opportunities are, and what do you see as the solutions?
Right. So a simple answer to that is, I think it comes down to accountability. I can't lose you, or I can't miss you if I know who you are. And that personal intention, I know it may seem simplistic, but it is very important. The accountability piece of that I see in what can't be acceptable to us is that we're not meeting the needs of all of our students. So that means through, when we look at our data of academics, who's excelling and who's not. But then getting to the next question, which is, why are they not? And what are we going to do about it? And that's the question that has to sit in every school, and a conversation that has to happen in every school team. And that's why a big part of what we say is, you know, we're looking at data holistically from MCPS, but we're expecting for the names, the faces to be connected to that at the school so that no one ever goes missing. And so that is an intentional process of accountability in which in the school system, but in every school as well, has to know exactly who our students are. And if we are missing someone, who is it? Because then are we missing them for a day? Are we missing them in 2 classes? What is that? So that's why I come back to the accountability. And that's a big part of the vision of what we're going to be doing in the school system moving forward, is how are we being accountable to that? And if there are spaces of vulnerability in which we see that, what are we doing about it? And that means that our efforts are always going to not be a one-size-fits-all model. And I've actually tried to model that as a superintendent by spending time in all of our communities. This is a big county and a big diverse county, which I see as a strength for us. But because it's so big, we often have to create the processes and structures to make it feel small. And that means knowing each of our communities in a much more intimate way, working with them and knowing what the strengths and the issues are that exist in each of these different communities. And the same thing has to exist within how we work with our schools. 210 schools are a lot of schools. And we have over 160,000 students within our schools. But we also have to pay attention to, are we seeing a disproportionality in discipline? Are we seeing disproportionality in who's getting access to programs? Are we seeing disproportionality in who's excelling and who's not? Because if we are and we're not addressing that, then we are then perpetuating a problem that we say we want to solve. But we can't solve it unless we intentionally know where those pockets of disproportionality or the gaps are within the school system. That means that's that zero lens in to the schools to see exactly what's happening and how are we addressing that. And addressing the disparities can't come from just a place of a deficit thinking perspective. Because as I said, the educational infrastructure and system has to work for everyone. So for every student sitting in these classrooms, we have to make sure we're challenging all of them as well. Because one needs support and one needs more monitoring and attention does not mean that this should be getting in the way of whoever needs to soar to the next level being able to do that. And I use that same analogy around wellness. And our students have actually communicated this in so many different ways. And we always have to remember, our students tell us exactly what we need. It's up to us to listen to them and say what needs to be done in response to what they share with us. But even as we go through this path of really trying to support them in their well-being, knowing that we are in a mental health crisis right now, we've heard from our students, well, we feel like there's so much support and so much attention given to those who everybody's worried about or concerned about, but those of us who are doing well and trying to contribute to the positivity within our community, we're not being noticed. Same thing in how we educate them. It always has to be, paying attention and being very focused on all of them, not recognizing that they all need the same thing, but they all need to feel supported and getting what they need. So I think that's the answer. And it starts with accountability to close these gaps of disparities that we've been looking at over time and that have been exacerbated through the pandemic.
Mr. Chair, I see a board member, Angela Prentice of APRA. Angela? There you go.
There we are. Hello, Dr. McKnight. Thanks for your presentation. It's great to meet you via Zoom. Just a question. I live in the kind of metropolitan area. Most of us live in a metropolitan area. So I was just wondering if you've done any work, any collaboration with the other school districts like DC or Prince George's or Howard for best practices or in addressing issues.
Absolutely. Some of the problems that we're talking about solving here today, we shouldn't ever try to solve any problem, I will say, in isolation. And oftentimes, if you just talk to your neighbor, you'll recognize that the problem that you may be experiencing, they're experiencing too, especially in the DMV area, because quite frankly, all you have to do in some spaces is cross the street and you're in another county. So I'm so glad you asked that question. This is actually at the core of who I am as a collaborator. And I do find strength in building relationships, which is why I so strongly believe in partnership to solve any problem. So I absolutely have very close relationships and meet often with the superintendents in our bordering counties. Prince George's County, Howard County, which is where I used to work, Baltimore County. I mean, I could go on. I mean, the only places you probably don't see me interacting as much as the places that are pretty far away from us that look very different from Montgomery County, but absolutely. And I have learned so much in participating in those relationships. And, I'm sure that they feel that reciprocal benefit in working with me. And so it's always about when you extend yourself to others and say, we're trying to work on an issue. It's normally that common ground of, oh, we have the same issue, let's talk. That creates that space to say, we're all in this together. So definitely something that I value. I've gotten some of my best ideas and again, have shared some of my best thinking with the partners in the other school districts. And right now, some of the issues that we're solving as in communities and in education as a result of the pandemic is quite frankly the only way we're going to survive. And I just believe in the fact that if you care about children, you care about children. Now, yes, I am responsible for the over 160,000 that are here in Montgomery County. But if we solve a problem or we learn something that's going to help children in another community close to us, of course, why not? We all benefit. Absolutely.
Thank you. And speaking of partners, I see a hand up of our great partner, Ben Wu of Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. Ben?
Well, thank you, Gigi. We are great partners. And I also want to vouch for Dr. McKnight as a terrific partner and collaborator. And I wanted to tell the Chamber Board what a great job she's doing in making sure that MCPS is a critical partner in the future of our economic development and also our workforce development. And just to be illustrative, let me give you a couple of examples. Just this past weekend, Dr. McKnight and I were over at Montgomery College. And what MCPS has done under her leadership is to try to reimagine and realign the relationship, especially with the post-secondary academic institutions. And so there has been a program that we've partnered with in conjunction with Apple, MCPS, Montgomery College, and MCDC that is now in its 4th year, Montgomery Can Code, that is receiving a lot of attention in Cupertino and also nationally. And now they are looking to expand it even further. And so on Saturday, we cut the ribbon for Ignite Hub, which is a community-based hub using Apple products to help solve community problems and create community solutions for entrepreneurs, nonprofits, as well as students and members of the community. So I would urge everyone to look into that just a little bit more because it's a very exciting project. Also, Dr. McKnight is helping to lead a reimagining of our educational ecosystem, along with Ann Kadamian over at USG and Jermaine Williams over at Montgomery College. And we're signing an MOU along with MCDC and also Workforce Montgomery to reinforce this new collaboration. This is something that we've discussed with the County Council and the County Executive. And so we believe that this collaboration will create new pathways for student success and also for career training, curriculum development, and also sector strategies that will help support and grow our key industry sectors. And then another area that Dr. McKnight and I are just beginning a conversation about is an area that the council and the chamber have identified as priorities. The Montgomery County Chamber just gave Dr. Darrell Pines over the University of Maryland a visionary award for the great work that's being done on quantum. And we see the opportunity to really engage in the quantum space to be able to attract a lot of investments and companies to Montgomery County, since we have all these resources and assets. But quantum starts at the very beginning, and being able to provide students with a basis for quantum education will give us the workforce that we think will put us at an advantage around other countries or areas around the country to attract quantum companies. And so we're looking forward to working with Dr. McKnight in MCPS to be able to further that in the K through 12 level, also to create quantum clubs in high schools. Blair is the only quantum club in the country right now, but if we can institute that throughout the Montgomery County Public School System, that will give us another lever in order for us to really be competitive and to be able to create advantages for us to really develop this nascent but very important technology for us in the future, for our competitiveness economically, as well as for our national security. So thank you again for all the collaboration and partnership that you provided, Dr. McKnight.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's been great work and so much more to do. It's really exciting.
We're almost up on our time. I don't see another question, but I do have one that's maybe a little weird. I always like to ask weird questions.
No weird questions.
No weird questions. And maybe it's a little personal, but I have, as Gigi knows, I have a fascination around leadership, people that are influential and persuasive. And obviously, I don't know the number of staff or the people that report up through you, but I know it's a lot. And a lot of research would suggest around purpose-driven organizations and mission orientation. I'm curious, how do you go about that with all of your staff? And it's a wide range of people. I'm curious, do you have a leadership philosophy or something that you look to espouse that mission orientation that you obviously have?
Absolutely. I try to think about it I used to actually be a leadership development leader here in Montgomery County, a central office in terms of training the principals. So I'm always fascinated around leadership development because it's something that we always have to think about because people just don't fall into leadership and just do leadership without it being supported. I do think in an organization, it's important to be very clear on what the vision is and communicating that vision and being consistent in communication of that vision, being intentional through communication, being intentional through interactions, all of the things that support the vision so it becomes a part of the culture. So I think that's where it starts. The other part is I do strongly believe in executive coaching. I do. There is power in making sure, especially in an organization that is a large one, like Montgomery County with over 25,000 employees, full-time employees, and close to 5,000 part-time employees. And most importantly, these are employees who are caring for our children. And so you always have that piece of it as well. We're not a manufacturer, I guess I would say, in which we're creating a product. It's lives, it's children, it's people, and it does project itself into the community in a way that is that's just one that's built in the DNA of a community. I mean, children are just a part of that. And executive coaching and how to help people to successfully navigate that vision and being thoughtful and purposeful about how time is spent, productive resources that helps to communicate that vision purposely is where this training and support comes in. And I believe that people stay in organizations and stay invested when the support is there to help them be successful, which is another big component of executive coaching. So those are just some things that I find as really important leadership development components that must exist in an organization in order for it to be successful.
Very good, thank you. Gigi, I think we're coming right up on the hour, so I don't know if there's any last question or something you would like to raise. But
I do have a question, and my question is how can we support your success?
So we have started that tonight. I would like for us to be able to come together more frequently and to develop some goals collectively that we would like to accomplish in partnership. I think it's good tonight we laid the foundation in terms of the importance of partnership, but when we think about the power of the Chamber of Commerce and its role within a community, and how does that intentionally work within the school system and the vision of where we are right now, I'd like for us to be able to map some of that out and say, what are some outcomes that we want to be able to achieve together, and then be able to measure them so that we can then measure the impact of that partnership. So I think that's the most important thing, being able to make that commitment to come together to do that.
Well, since we're an organization that convenes, I think that's perfect. And we advocate. And so it's important for us to know, how we can support your needs for not only your operating budget and your programming, but your capital needs as well. That's the built environment, where you're doing this, you need to be in a chemistry lab to deliver chemistry. You can't really do it in a gymnasium and vice versa. So it matters, right? The spaces that you do that. And so that's important. It's important to our community. It demonstrates our values, but it also accelerates success to make sure that you've got all of the pieces, what's happening inside the building, and and the facilities and the supports and the entire infrastructure of what you need. Big issues over the last year or two, of course, was connectivity. That we don't have an adequate broadband infrastructure, but moving in that direction, that's pretty important too. And even more important, having navigated over the last 2 years, I think that was certainly true for our education community.
Yeah, Gigi, I completely agree. And I think us coming together more frequently where I'm able to share, what are some things that are working really well and what are some pain points that may be impeding the progress would be good, because that way I think the most empowering opportunity I can provide is information to you. And so us being able to meet regularly provides that opportunity as well. So thank you.
Well, that's what we're here to do. I want to say thank you and thank you so much, and thank you to our board members and the guests that joined us and the team, the chamber team that did all the things that needed to happen for tonight to happen. I want to say thank you. I'm excited to be working with you. I've always been engaged with our school system since long before I came to the chamber, so I'm thrilled to be working with you and you know, the start of a new chapter. It's exciting, don't you think?
I completely agree.
I think it's
Ready to lock
terrific.
arms and we're going to do it together.
Yay! So over to you, Mr. Chair.
Take
No,
care,
we'll just wrap it
everyone.
up with that. Thank you very much. And thanks for everybody for attending tonight. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.